It's 6 p.m. here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let us begin with the headlines. South Korea's presidential office describes the North's latest verbal threats as a direct challenge to not just Seoul, but also the world, in response by hiking the country's military alert level. Registration of candidates begins for the April general election. The ruling Saenuri Party scrambles to readjust its nomination list as a number of big names defect overnight. Belgium hunts 2 suspects related to the Brussels bombings. EU ministers will hold emergency meetings, and one big question would be, how could Belgian authorities have allowed this to happen? We begin with South Korea's response to the North's latest barrage of threats attacking South Korea's presidential office and the president herself. The presidential office of Cheongwade ordered the military to up its alert level against what it called Pyongyang's challenge to the world. Here's Song Ji-sun with the details.
A direct, explicit announcement of an attack targeting the president of South Korea. Seoul is taking the issue seriously and defined Pyongyang's provocation not just a direct challenge to South Korea, but towards the world.
It's a challenge and threat to the Republic of Korea and our president, and a direct challenge to the world. Considering the severity of North Korea's threats, President Park has ordered defense readiness to be reinforced to guarantee the safety of our people, and called on the public to be prepared for any emergency.
Denouncing the annual South Korea-US joint military drills, Pyongyang state-run media on Wednesday broadcast that it will remove the South Korean president by specifically targeting the top office with its military and special forces. Seoul's Unification Ministry on the same day responded that Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions is what's heightened attention on the Korean peninsula, and that the North should choose to change its ways. At a standing National Security Council meeting, the South Korean government also ordered all relevant agencies to prepare necessary countermeasures, with South Korea's defense ministry saying it has been on full standby for any provocation since Pyongyang's 4th nuclear test in January. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Pyongyang claims to have taken another step forward in its nuclear missile capability. A U.S.-based North Korea monitoring website says it has also identified the location of North Korea's nuclear warhead re-entry test site. Our Connie Kim looks into what the upgrades would imply.
In what appears to be another stride forward in its nuclear and missile capabilities, North Korea says it has successfully conducted a solid fuel rocket test. The North state-run Korean Central News Agency reported Thursday that Kim Jong-un made the comment while supervising a ground-based test on a rocket engine and its separation. Pyongyang has used liquid propellants to launch long-range ballistic missiles, but has not yet used solid propellants for ICBMs. Seoul's defense ministry confirmed North Korea is in the early stages of developing solid-fueled rockets.
Switching to solid fuel means North Korea could frequently fire ballistic missiles. North Korea seems to parade its nuclear and missile development progress within and outside of the regime.
If North Korea's claim is confirmed, then it would be harder to detect signs prior to any launch, as solid propellants reduce launch preparation time while increasing the rocket's mobility. It would also mean that Pyongyang is once again going against UN Security Council resolutions that ban the North from developing ICBMs. North Korea has been stepping up its bellicose rhetoric in an apparent protest to the annual South Korea-US joint military exercises and the UN sanctions announced this month. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The UN Human Rights Council has adopted a resolution on North Korea's human rights record. Kwon So-ha shares with us the latest in efforts to find ways to legally pursue the regime's crimes against humanity.
At its 31st session in Geneva on Wednesday, the 47 members of the UN Human Rights Council adopted a resolution on North Korea's human rights violations. The resolution sets up a group of experts that will look into ways to make North Korea accountable for its human rights abuses. At the next session in June, the Council will appoint the experts, and one of their tasks will include finding a legal pathway for referring Pyongyang's leadership to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. The resolution was jointly requested by the European Union and Japan earlier this year and adopted without a vote. The Council's report assessed North Korea's human rights situation as remaining of serious concern with arbitrary killings, torture, and unlawful detention. It also pointed out the discrimination and violence against women and restrictions of freedoms of expression. The South Korean government on Thursday welcomed the move.
The adoption of the resolution by overwhelming support is very meaningful in that it reflects the international community's big concerns about North Korea's human rights record.
Some council members, including North Korea's closest ally China and Russia, were not on the same page as most others and disassociated themselves from the process ahead of the decision. North Korea's mission to the UN boycotted the session last month, denying the allegations about its rights violations. Soar, Arirang News.
Turning to South Korea's political arena, with just 20 days to go until the April 13th general election, the two-day candidate registration period kicked off this morning. And after a night of last-minute defections, the country's ruling party is retooling its nomination list. Shin Se-min provides an inside look at the sudden shifts and readjustments.
Just an hour before the midnight deadline for candidate nominations, a string of key ruling Saenuri Party members announced they were leaving to mount independent bids in retaliation for being left off the nomination list. Included among them was Yoo Seung-min, who stepped down from floor leader post last July after President Park Geun-hye criticized him for settling a passage of a revision to the National Assembly Act with the main opposition party. The list also includes three-term lawmaker Chu Ho-young and Representative Lee Jae-oh, considered an opponent of the party's pro-Park faction. With the departure, the ruling camp's leadership and nomination committee are going over their final list of candidates before registration ends Friday. The main opposition Minju Party of Korea and minor opposition People's Party have both confirmed their final list of candidates. Minju Party interim leader Kim Jong-in said the election should be a referendum on the current administration and its failure to boost the economy. The newly formed People's Party is vowing to turn the country's two-party structure into a three-party system and aims to secure 20% of the vote on April 13th. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Korea and France celebrate 130 years of diplomatic ties this year. The two sides have been preparing various events for their citizens so they can experience each other's cultures in their home countries. In honor of the occasion, President Park Geun-hye gave a congratulatory speech to the KoreaFrance Leadership Forum in Seoul on Thursday. She said France has been a friend to Korea even through tough times and expressed hopes the two nations will continue to work together on solving humanity's challenges such as climate change and poverty. The president added France could be a great partner in helping achieve her administration's initiatives of a creative economy and cultural convergence. Korea's financial regulators are gearing up efforts to take the country's finance industry to the next level, and a new type of service will be introduced in the first half of this year. It will work independently for their clients to provide them with neutral advice. Hwang Ji-hye tells us more.
In the next couple of months, a so-called independent financial advisor system will be adopted in Korea. The new type of financial service describes advisors working independently for their clients to offer neutral advice on financial matters and recommend products from the whole market rather than representing a certain insurance company or a bank. Before, such services were not widely available for individuals, as current investment consulting firms deal with institutional investors, while private services of commercial banks were only available for those with high income. The introduction of such system, which is scheduled to come in the first half of this year, was decided during a meeting by the Financial Services Commission on Thursday. The Commission also pledged to adopt a robo-advisor system as early as the second half of this year. The robo-advisor is another type of financial services firm that manages client portfolios through computer algorithms, cutting costs and passing the savings on to investors. The commission adds that the set of measures come as demand over investment consulting rose on the back of low interest rate and aging population trend. It said it will keep a close eye on monitoring market conditions so that the new policies could settle well. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Staying in Korea, property prices have soared globally over the past 10 years. While that's great news for those who already own homes, the problem is more and more young people, those who only recently gained financial independence, are finding it harder and harder, practically impossible to get on the property ladder. Kim Min-ji reports.
Housing prices around the world have soared nearly 50% on average over the past decade. According to the Bank of International Settlements, Hong Kong saw the biggest jump. Hong Kong's property price index stood at 93.4 in the third quarter of 2005, but by the same period in 2015, the figure had surged to 305. That's up nearly 230%. To give that some context, if a house was valued at $3 million in 2005, it would be worth about $10 million 10 years later. Over the same period, Sweden saw its index jump nearly 92% and Norway nearly 83%. However, for the U.S., prices actually fell almost 5%, which is mainly attributed to a plunge in housing prices in the midst of the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. In general, worldwide, it's becoming harder for households, especially the younger generation, to buy a home, as the growth in income has not been rising as fast. Online pricing database Numbeo says people in 59 out of 102 countries worldwide would need to save their yearly income for at least 10 years in order to buy a house in their country. Hong Kong topped the list yet again with a price-to-income ratio of just over 37.5. This means the average worker would need to work almost 40 years in order to buy a house of their own. The situation isn't that much better in Korea, where a person needs to save up for about 14 years on average.
Due to the high property prices, more young people and newly married couples are moving out of the capital or deciding to live with their parents. As they don't have a lot of savings when they start out, they will have to buy smaller properties and gradually move up from there as they build up their wealth.
As for Korea, experts don't see a major increase in housing prices for the time being. But the problem is they don't expect a major drop either. And they predict the mass exodus from the capital will be a common trend for the next few years. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Reports of a new suspect seen at one of the sites of the Brussels attacks is emerging. As the manhunt continues, uncomfortable questions are being asked of the Belgian authorities about how this could have happened. Kwon Jang-ho gives us the updates.
Belgian authorities are currently on the hunt for at least 2 men who were directly involved with the Tuesday bombings at a metro station and airport in Brussels. The first is a new suspect who was spotted on CCTV cameras accompanying the metro station bomber Khalid al-Bakroui just before the attack. According to reports in the French and Belgian press, the man has not yet been identified, and it is not clear whether he was killed at the scene or is on the run. The second is a man seen at the airport with the 2 suicide bombers, one of whom has been identified as Khalid's brother, Ibrahim al-Bakroui. It is believed that this man fled the scene after his bomb failed to detonate. 31 people are confirmed to have been killed in the attack so far, but that number could change. An additional 61 people are in critical condition, 4 of whom are in a coma and haven't yet been identified, so authorities have only named a handful of the deceased victims so far. Families still waiting to hear from missing loved ones have turned to social media and news outlets to try and find them. Meanwhile, the attacks have raised questions about what was done to prevent them. The 3 named suspects were known to have links to the Islamic State cell responsible for the Paris attacks in November last year, and one had even been arrested and deported from Turkey last June after being suspected of being an Islamist fighter. The Belgian authorities were informed of the arrest, but with no specific information linking him to terrorism, he was not extradited. Officials told the Associated Press that there are at least 400 potential terrorists who have been trained by ISIS to carry out attacks across Europe. EU and Interior Justice Ministers will be holding an emergency meeting in Brussels on Thursday to discuss how to move forward. Ahead of that, Salah Abdeslam, one of the Paris attackers arrested in Brussels last week, is due in court for a hearing in the morning. Kwon Jang-woo, Arirang News.
These are the stories we're following at this hour. More updates coming your way on News Center with Moon Gun-young. For now, thank you for watching.